to thank the organizers of this conference for the opportunity to participate in its work, because strengthening international security is an absolute priority to all nations. The challenges before the pandemic, such as international terrorism and extremism, have not disappeared. The activity of armed groups of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and their related groups in the Middle East and on the African continent is still quite high. Militants and terrorists continue to penetrate Afghanistan and the countries of Southeast Asia, where bloody terrorist attacks did not stop last year. Residents of a number of European cities have become victims of terrorism and religious extremism. Let us be quite honest. Despite the counter-terrorist measures, the international terrorist network has remained vital and active. It is capable of quick dissolution and movement of militant groups to areas of military conflicts. It still has a lot of resource support. It has practically no shortage in weapons or ammunition. It uses high-tech attack means, including UAVs. This, among other things, is a consequence of the fact that some states use radical Islamist groups in the areas of territorial conflicts to attain their own goals. Terrorists and extremists still try expanding outside the hotspots to try to increase the basis of their potential supporters in economic developed countries, and adapt successfully to the situation that changed last year significantly. I believe that the negative side effect of the forced coronavirus restrictions still has to be assessed in full. For instance, practically overall isolation has resulted into increased internet communications between people. The crisis that exacerbated in the economy last year, or the concerns of citizens for their health and overall the unpredictability of the future, have increased the level of social tension in the societies of various countries. Internet agitators of terrorism and extremism have been using this actively. They work both with marginalized levels of society, but also with representatives of the middle class, whose material situation has grown worse in the past years. What we actually see today in global network is a whole infrastructure that produces future terrorists. Youth are a special risk group, because their psychological attack continues in social network and game chats of popular multi-user games. Islamist groups have even made their own clones of such games, affecting the minds of potential supporters of terrorism and extremism, not only via voice communications, but also by including users in game situations where terrorist attacks are performed. I would like to point out that international terrorist organizations are not the only ones who have been trying to address the youth. School students, university students that have been in isolation during the pandemic and distance learning have been affected more and more by moderators of closed internet communities that promote the cult of violence against the peers, suicides, and other destructive forms of behavior. We see a way out of the situation in further strengthening of the laws aimed to protect youth from the ideology of violence, in developing and implementing new methods and mechanisms of interaction with education institutions, public organizations, and religious communities. Coming back to the topic of religious extremism and terrorism, I would like to point out another negative trend of the period of social distancing. I'm referring to the growing isolation of intransparent enclaves of immigrants and individual diasporas from the local residents. The rejection of by immigrants of the social and cultural norms and traditions of the host countries. In conditions like that, representatives of international terrorist organizations have been receiving a wide field to do their own propaganda and recruitment, to organize and perform terrorist attacks. We see another trend, the radicalization and bitterness of the local population towards the immigrants, towards national and religious minorities, the growth of ultra-right sentiments, the popularization of neo-Nazi ideas and organizations. It is important to note here that there are countries in Europe which until present condone Nazism or even deliberately include Nazi ideology in their national ideology. The paramilitary organizations that are active in their countries grant ultra-right activists from other countries an opportunity to train in their paramilitary camps. I would like to point out that while in their countries neo-Nazis are irreconcilable enemies of Muslims, in third countries they quite often, together with the radical Islamists, are members of mercenary groups, which is yet another evidence to the fact that terrorism remains terrorism, despite the slogans it uses. We in Russia wage a war on any manifestation of such terrorism. I encourage my colleagues to use the same approach. We see a significant trend in the continuing and strengthening of relations of international terrorist organizations in the hacker community and their focus on active work in the cyberspace. We cannot exclude that terrorists can carry out cyber attacks on objects of critically important infrastructure. In view of this, we see special threat in the fact that it is very difficult to identify the true source of attack on time, which can provoke acute intergovernmental conflicts. We believe that this problem cannot be solved without involving the entire global community. We believe that the process of negotiations should continue in order to harmonize international norms in the area of information security under the auspices of the UN. We are ready to start a dialogue with any parties wishing to form a secure cyberspace. Dear conference participants, Russia has formed an effectively functioning system of fighting any manifestation of terrorism, of preventing them and liquidating the consequences. The main tasks and areas of this work are reflected in the concept of counteraction of terrorism in the Russian Federation. The key role here lies in the National Anti-Terrorist Committee, which is an interdepartmental organization coordinating all the necessary measures at all the levels of government and local self-governance, and contributes to improvement of the legal base and engages institutions of the civil society. In a similar fashion, we carry out our government policy of fighting extremism. Last year, a new version of the respective national strategy of counteraction of extremism has been adopted. Combining the efforts of the government and the society helps to keep a stable trend towards reducing the number of terrorist attacks in Russia. Our experts share their practical experience and their forecasts on a regular scale with their foreign partners on the forum of the Counter-Terrorist Committee of the UN. I appeal to use this joint work in other formats with a focus on developing joint decisions of preventive nature. In particular, I refer to active counteraction of internet propaganda of the ideology of violence, which we believe is one of the reasons of continuous reproduction of international terrorist and extremist networks. I know from experience that it is impossible to eradicate terrorism and extremism relying only on force. It is important to fight for the hearts of citizens, to develop in them a rejection of destructive ideas, to create a healthy information environment where society would be protected from the influence of international terrorist organizations and extremist structures. I also believe it is necessary to start a broad operation aiming to prevent terrorists from using the cyberspace in order to raise human resources, financial resources, aiming to support their terrorist cells. I'm convinced that all the conference participants clearly see that today no government, no country is safe from manifestations of terrorist attacks. We can and we must solve the task of counteracting terrorism and extremism together. The basis of joint work is, in our view, in preventive and coordinated work in the anti-terrorism and extremism fields. In particular, we propose our partners to make a broader use of the National Bank of data on counteracting terrorism. As an example of organizing a productive multilateral cooperation, I would like to mention the work of the Counter-Terrorist Committee of the UN, the regional anti-terrorist structure of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Anti-Terrorist Center of the CIS. The annual meetings of heads of special services and heads of law enforcement bodies that are partners of the Russian Federation Federal Security Service. We invite interested parties to a meaningful dialogue on a wide range of issues related to counteracting terrorism and extremism. We're open for cooperation in other areas of ensuring international security.